People who can't do anything may be related to their past lives. As a punishment for causing so much pain to so many people in a previous life, it is possible to atone for the sins of the previous life by living a life of constant failure no matter what you do. If you were born around the year 2000, you will spend a lot of your life in pain and suffering due to illness. However, after 1,000 years or more, the situation will improve dramatically. A single food item can affect your health, and a single way of thinking can hinder help from the spirit world. In simple terms, people who continue to eat a lot of meat have a higher chance of developing cancer. After 3000, people who eat meat will be a very small minority. If you are in your middle age or older, it is better for your health if you gradually reduce the amount of meat you eat. Not a single human being is born with the intention of committing suicide. The only way to explain this to human beings in 2000 is to say, because that's the way the spirit world works. Furthermore, as a human being, I decided to be born on the earth in order to experience all these trials and hardships, and even though I went on a heart of loneliness, I changed my mind on the way, saying I hate it. It may end up. In such cases, they try to resist being born, and the fetus always dies before it is born. This is the reality of spirits called Mizuko in Japanese. For those spirits who flee back to the spirit world on the way, a great punishment awaits them. In the human world, it takes only a few decades, or 100 years at the most, to complete all the suffering and return to the joyous spirit world, but the spirits who escape and return on the way are forced to suffer differently from the spirits of suicides. Even though we have many friends in the spirit world, we don't feel particularly lonely or sad even if we don't see them for decades because our memories of our previous lives have been temporarily erased. It is sadder to be separated from one's family in the human world. However, the spirit who became Mizuko remembers the existence of memory and knowledge in the spirit world. The spirit who loves himself very clearly. They are unable to communicate with their close friends, and this causes them agonizing suffering that is an order of magnitude greater than that of the human world. The human world, where we cannot recognize the existence of our close friends, is still better. On the other hand, parents who have abortions are regarded as spiritual murderers and are punished in the spirit world, except in unavoidable cases. Doctors who perform abortions are also punished in the spirit world. Doctors who perform abortions are spiritually the same as mass murderers. They are treated as murderers without regard to unavoidable circumstances such as the danger to the life of the mother. The performance of work in helping a baby to be born will be rewarded in the spirit world, and the young man's immediate act of sexual pleasure that led him to abort the child he had for selfish reasons will be punished in the spirit world as a spiritual sin. In that sense, plus or minus, you should be able to understand that it will be calculated properly in the spirit world. So, in the world after 3000, when spiritual progress has progressed considerably from the material side, sexual activity is only obligatory and doing for someone rather than sexual activity that gives immediate pleasure. Acts such as helping are far more joyful. People who indulge only in sexual activities will be treated in hospitals. If you commit murder, in your next reincarnation, you will be killed by someone or you may be punished with a big shock in the spirit world by. You should not become a murderer. It doesn't mean that you won't be punished. When you are born in the human world, you can never escape from hardship. You have to be prepared and overcome each hurdle. You have no choice but to overcome each hurdle. No matter how hard you try, you can't escape it. It's the work we do every day. Let's do our best to carry out our duties. Of course, suicide is strictly forbidden. God does not leave you on the earth without a friend. There is always a guardian spirit that has been watching over you since you were born. If you commit murder, you will be punished in the spirit world by being killed by someone or a terrible accidental death at the next rebirth. You shouldn't be a murderer. When you are born into the human world, you can never escape from hardships. You must be prepared for the fate that will surely befall you and overcome each and every hurdle. No matter how hard you try, you can't escape it. Daily work and tasks. Let's do our best to carry out our respective duties. Of course, suicide is strictly prohibited. God does not cast you down to the earth without a friend. There is always a guardian spirit watching over you from the time you are born. You are the earth. And you chose to be born Japanese. For those spirits who escaped as a result of miscarriage or suicide, there are punishments awaiting them. You were born as human beings only because you were anxious but did not run back. You could have been born on a planet other than Earth, of course. However, we chose to be born on Earth because we had a good reason. There is a good reason why you were born on a planet that is tens of thousands of years more advanced than Earth, where you could have remembered all your previous lives, but you were born on Earth, where you cannot remember any of your previous lives. In the case of a totally unexpected and sudden accident, it is not suicide, and you may be taken to a hospital in the spirit world to relieve the mental shock. The tragedy is that spiritual knowledge, which is common knowledge to most of humanity since 3000, was not yet understood in 2000. I can only answer, because that's the way the spirit world works. That's the only answer I can give. However, the one who bullied them will also be punished well. In the first place, there is no spirit born on the premise of committing suicide. Because all spirits are children of God. To put it bluntly, suicide is nothing more than an escape for a coward. That is the view of the spirit world. Suicide seems to be the solution to everything. However, even after suicide, the sufferings of the time when you were alive are still there and you continue to suffer. Moreover, through the cords that connect the body to the soul, you will continue to suffer tremendously, beyond the reach of any physical suffering. There is no sleep and no tools for entertainment as there was when you were alive. The suffering will go on forever, and nothing will ever be resolved. Moreover, there are spirits who commit suicide repeatedly every time they are born, and they are worried, I have committed suicide 4 times. I have to be reborn again, but can I endure the trials? Even in 2000, the actual existence of spirits was sent to the human world as spiritual communication. It can't be helped because that's the way the spirit world works, and humans and even spirits in the spirit world have absolutely no power to change it. One of the tragedies of the Japanese people is that they don't know that if they live to the end of their lives and die properly, they usually have a life in the spirit world that is full of joy and hope. That is why we must continue to send spiritual truths that transcend dimensions to the Japanese people. It is a proof that you don't know anything about the mechanism of the spirit world. In the human world, even if you do something wrong, you can get away with it or blame someone else for it, but in the spirit world, everything is exposed. There is a word Yama's mirror that is often used in Buddhism, right? Unfortunately, the details are different, but there are similar things. Specifically, immediately after death, many spirits are mentally exhausted. They are taken to a resting place in the spirit world, where they can rest and relax. At the same time, you will be able to see what you did, how you acted, and what you thought when the spirit was alive. There were many things that you had forgotten. You become the judge and make your own judgment on what you have done before you died, and roughly speaking, how much you have done for others before you died is the determining factor. Spirits who have committed crimes or committed vices repeatedly will be deeply ashamed of the stupidity of their way of life, while those who have done a lot for others will be grateful for their worthy way of life. You will be the judge of your life, and you will judge yourself. You will not be judged by Yama. There is no place to hide in the spirit world. And that's the tragedy of humanity, who knew almost nothing about spiritual facts in 2000. Most of the human beings after 3000, though, have common sense. It's a quick and comprehensive way to see what you did before you died. Within about a week or 2, you will be done looking at all of your actions before you die. After death, while resting comfortably, we look back on our actions during our lives and sum up our lives with the help and inspiration of high-level spirits in the spirit world. In the case of spirits who are considered to be spiritually advanced to some degree, a high-level spirit from a higher level of the spirit world may come down and ask questions about each of their actions before death. While repeating questions and answers such as "Why did you take such an action? You should have been able to help this person at this time, right?" Some spirits are forced to reflect on how stupid they were and what they were doing against the spirit world. The punishment of having the sins committed during one's lifetime shown endlessly in front of one's eyes is severe, but being forced to think about how badly one acted in theory is actually more painful. Don't worry, I'll look at it speedily. For some people, it only takes 3 to 4 days to complete the summary of their lives. No evil deed is overlooked, but no good deed done to others is overlooked either. In the spirit world, it is very clear whether or not you have lived a worthwhile life. Even if you think that you are full of faults, there is no need to be pessimistic. Even Jesus of Nazareth, Jesus Christ, didn't live a perfect life. Only when the money changers devastated the sanctuary, he was furious and drove him away with a whip. To be angry is a human emotion. In other words, Jesus was a spirit and a human being. Jesus was a spirit and a human being, but he had more of God's heart in him than any other spirit or person. Even Jesus could not live a perfect life, and it is impossible for an ordinary person to live a perfect life. You should live to the fullest according to your own conscience. If you can do something for someone else, that alone is worth being born. This is almost common sense for people after the year 3000. Moral concepts differ from era to era. The best thing to do is to act in a way that you feel is the most right. Even if it is a mistake, if you really think so and act accordingly, you will not be specially criticized in the spirit world. However, all human beings are endowed with reason. If a person who has the power to judge right and wrong with reason commits an evil act, he or she will receive the appropriate blame in the spirit world. It is a rule that runs through the spirit world, and it is also an indicator for the future of humanity. Let's not forget that many of the business tycoons of the year 2000 were scorned and spoken to by other spirits after their deaths because they were ashamed of their foolish way of life. This is because in the spirit world, money is of no use whatsoever, and only your humanity and actions will be evaluated. When you die, you have to leave all your money behind on earth. After 3000, people who only focus on making money will be despised, and people who share their wealth with more people and take the initiative to help the poor will be respected. That law remains unchanged. However, the laws of the world after 3000 can be imitated by people in 2000, and I would rather recommend that you adopt those aspects. There is nothing to lose by doing so. Didn't the Bible say, "It is harder for a rich man to go to heaven than for a camel to go through the eye of a needle"? Rather than the animal camel, it is better to interpret it as a thick rope. It is a rule in the spiritual world that the greatest role of the rich is to give charity to the weak. There are no exceptions to this rule. Of course, it doesn't mean that you can't enjoy life, but there is a natural limit, and if you exceed it, you may even be punished. From a spiritual point of view, the sudden death of a rich person is not a small case of divine punishment. In the spirit world after death, the high-level spirits will say to you, "You had that much time and money, and you knew about the existence of the poor from the news. Moreover, you had the chance to help them at this time, but you didn't do it. I'm not asking you to give away all of your possessions. Why did you focus only on enjoying your life when you were in a position to volunteer even once a month?" In the spirit world, you can't hide anything at all, so other spirits can see everything. When they see the disdain that many spirits have for them, they become unable to bear it. In the worst-case scenario, you may blame yourself and continue to suffer for hundreds of years. It's not memory loss, it's just that you can't remember while you're alive. To put it bluntly, if you have memories of the spirit world or previous lives, it will only hinder your training at the current level of Earth humanity. We were born to suffer, but it doesn't make sense to solve everything right away, and some people may even die madly. If you remember all the memories of your previous life as a cute little girl who was raped, humiliated, and killed, you will never feel at ease, not even for a moment. Therefore, at the level of the Earth's human beings, we are simply prevented from recalling memories of the spirit world and previous lives. Again, on planets that are much more spiritually evolved than Earth, memories of previous lives can be vividly recalled. Even in terms of food, the food of the inhabitants of other planets cannot feed the bodies of Earthlings. On the other hand, the bodies of the inhabitants of other planets cannot digest the food of the people of Earth. This is because the bodies of the inhabitants of each planet are made differently from each other in every way. Animal spirits are different from humans. Immediately after death, the energy remains for a time, but eventually it is absorbed by the source energy. They do not remain as souls, but are all absorbed into the source energy. However, if a pet that has been loved by a human dies first, it will wait in the spirit world until its master dies and enters the spirit world to resume its life. In this way, the master and the pet often live together for a while. However, the speed of spiritual evolution between humans and animals is so different that the animals are unable to keep up with our spiritual evolution. When that happens, the animal will be absorbed by the source energy and will not remain as a solid body. This is the spiritual truth that was explained to mankind in 2000 in a simple way. If you say something like that in the spirit world, they'll laugh at you. To be reborn as another animal means degeneration. Spirits are always improving, never degenerating. In the spirit world, there is a common pattern of disguising oneself as an animal to fool the psychic in order to make fun of humans. This is why some spirits commit suicide every time they are reincarnated and lament that they have already committed suicide 4 times. This is a part of the story that was very difficult for humans to understand in 2000. To put it simply, in order to prevent a suicidal spirit from committing suicide again in the next incarnation, a team of dozens or hundreds of spirits is formed in the spirit world just for that reincarnated spirit. The reincarnation of a spirit who committed suicide in a previous life will never have an easy life, but will be forced to live a difficult and painful life. This is because karma cannot be settled unless they survive to the end of their life. To put it simply, in order to prevent a spirit who committed suicide from committing suicide again in the next incarnation, a team of dozens or hundreds of spirits is created on the spirit world side just for the reborn spirit. In the case of the rebirth of a spirit who committed suicide in the previous life, he never lives an easy life and is forced into a harsh and painful life. This is because if you do not survive and live to the end of your life, you will not be able to clear your karma. The spirits in the spiritual world can help you as much as they want, but if you don't live through the suffering and trials to the end, you will be forced to live the same life again someday. Although the spirit world has prepared tools and guidance to help us endure the stormy ordeal, the weakness of our mind and the problems of our spirituality will eventually take over, and we may end up committing suicide again. No matter how much guidance and direction is given in the spirit world, there is nothing that can be done when a person shortens his or her life by choice. This is one of the reasons why there are spirits who repeatedly commit suicide.